welcome to this special edition of New York Now, bringing you live coverage of Governor Kathy Hochul's State of the State address as part of our partnership with the New York Public News Network. I'm David Lombardo, host of WCNY's The Capitol Press Room and Dispatches from Planet Albany, and in a few minutes, hopefully, we'll take you live to the Hart Theater in Albany's Capitol Complex, where Governor Hochul is scheduled to deliver her remarks. And stay with us after the speech, because we'll bring you insights and analysis from the studio about what we just heard. But before we hear from the governor, we're going to discuss some of the priorities that have already been identified for 2026 and some of the topics that will likely be part of her fifth State of the State address. And to do all that and much more, I'm joined in the studio by Chantel Plummer, head of the New York practice for Tusk Strategies, where she is a partner, and Morgan Hook, a partner with Blue Jacket Strategies. So, Morgan, I want to start with you, and given your experience doing communications for not one, but two governors, I'm curious what you see as the goal for today. What is a governor trying to get out of a State of the State address, and who is the audience for these remarks and maybe the ensuing coverage?
I think, like every governor, probably for as long as any of us have been alive, the goal of the State of the State address is to set the agenda in Albany and make it clear that the governor's agenda is the thing that is going to drive the day. Now, of course, the legislature has something to say about that, but you're asking, what is the goal of this governor? Governor wants to walk out there, say, this is what our priorities are in Albany this year. This is what we're going to work on during the legislative session. And really, again, just sort of like set the tone for the session. So a lot of times you'll have governors who will go out there and we're going to work together, and we're going to do a lot of great things. And then there was one year, as you mentioned, my former boss, who went out there and said, all of you are the problem, and this place doesn't work, and I'm here to change it. And you know, those are different approaches to the same speech, but it's very much like you're setting the tone in Albany for the session, and then you go from there.
And that aggressive approach wasn't necessarily well received by state lawmakers. So, Chantel, you come to this with some experience in the state legislature, to top staffer for the Senate majority. What do the majorities, both held by Democrats, the Assembly and Senate, what are they listening for in the speech? And is it solely about policy? Is it about tone? Is it some combination? Is there something else that they're listening for or looking for?
I think they are just basically listening. They're seeing where there are points of agreement, and they're seeing where there are points where they disagree. So this is an election year. Everybody's up for election. So everybody's on pins and needles to see what the governor is going to preview. They want to know how big of the fight is going to be during budget. As we all know, State of the State is a appetizer before the big meal. And they're trying to see, are we going to be fighting for whether it's taxing the rich, whether it's, you know, her affordability agenda, does it go far enough? They're really going to see where their points of agreement and where their points of disagreement is. I don't think they care about tone unless she comes out overly disrespectful. This is an election year. She's going to be, I want to work with you, and I want to be, you know, New York's mom in chief.
Yeah, and they want a smooth session, for example. They don't want to be here.
They want to get out of Dodge. I think the primaries are in June, so they want to get out of here ASAP. They don't want a long budget, and they just want to figure out what they need to figure out and go home.
Well, Morgan, in addition to laying out the agenda for the future, this is also an opportunity for a governor to take a victory lap, so to speak, to say, here's everything we've accomplished to date. And in that lens, what do you think this governor is going to trumpet, and what do you think this governor should trumpet?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the State of the State is long on rhetoric, and as Chantal just said, when you get to the budget in a week or 2 weeks, that's when you sort of the rubber meets the road, and what are the details of how we're actually going to do these policy proposals. So,
how are we going to pay for these proposals?
Yeah, exactly. So as part of that rhetoric, you want to recap and you want to say, look at all of these great things. And typically you're highlighting achievements that are going to be in line with, like, fit the narrative of what that next thing is. So you just mentioned the mom in chief, right? We're going to hear stuff. We're going to be hearing affordability is the buzzword of Albany and frankly all of politics right now. We're going to be hearing a lot about that today, I would have to think. And it's going to be policies. She's going to talk about, I would think, achievements that she has had that have helped New Yorkers in that affordability space. And then she'll say, the next thing we're going to do is this groundbreaking thing, childcare subsidies, things like that. So I think it'll all be the kind of, it won't just be like greatest hits, here's some random stuff I did. It's all going to be part of creating a narrative and creating a story that she wants to tell over the next few months.
Doing the checklist in my head, though, the things that come to mind that the governor would trumpet in terms of addressing that A word, affordability, would be what they would describe as a middle class tax cut. Got there eventually, and maybe the reason it came out so difficultly is because it's hard to even recognize that for most New Yorkers. But then also thinking about the minimum wage increase, additional spending on child tax credits, the money for school meals, that so-called inflation refund check that I think more than 8 million filers receive, but whether they're still aware of it. Any of that stuff that you think is worth promoting in this context, worth hammering home to the voters so that they remember this come Election Day in 2026?
I mean, yes. I mean, look, that's part of your job, right? You have to go out there and you have to talk about your achievements. I feel like I've seen Governor Hochul get better at this over time. It's kind of a weird thing, just like, let's put it just in human terms. Like, how many of us walk around during the day and talk about all the great things that we did that day or that week or that month? As a politician, you have to walk out there on stage in every event you do, and you have to basically brag about yourself. And I think I actually think we've seen Kathy Hochul get better at this. I think there was a little bit more modesty that existed when she first became governor. And you'd sort of see
Lieutenant Governor energy.
Yeah, you'd sort of see this sort of almost discomfort. But it's the part of the performance, right? I certainly don't mean it as a criticism. It is part of the job to go out there and get reelected and to see your agenda get passed in the legislature. And it's the same, by the way, for legislators as well. You have to go out there and you have to make your case with the voters. And you can only make your case with the voters. You can't do it subtly. You have to come right out and say, this is what I did for you. And so I think the hope, and she's going to talk for a long time, and she's going to say a lot of things today. You're hoping that a voter hears one of these things. You're hoping that something catches the attention of the broader public that comes out of this speech, because most people aren't, you asked before, we didn't really answer the question, who's the audience? I think the primary audience, quite frankly, are the people in that room, sort of like the inside Planet Albany people. The secondary audience, because you hope some of these messages get out to them, is the public, is the voting public. And what is the thing that's going to capture their attention this year or moving forward? It's probably going to be one or two things. We don't necessarily know what those are, but you kind of throw as much stuff as you can out there and hope that something grabs their attention and they like it.
And you mentioned performance. Let's cut to the Hart Theater right now, where the governor is going to deliver her remarks. Right now, you'll see on the screen the Syracuse University Marching Band, which is performing a medley of New York-related songs. Chantel?
We did miss the distraction-free mascot, the little green guy.
Yes.
We did just miss the green. Yeah, he was out there, and I was like totally distracted.
But that speaks to, well, let's listen to it a little bit. People who can hear this is the governor's alma mater, so that explains why Syracuse University is taking part in this. And let's come back to the studio. Chantel.
Was that on air?
We'll find out later. But you've got a record of being a defender of SUNY,
Listen,
Morgan.
Well,
I think we should be supporting the largest public institution largest. Yeah, I should know.
Let's just go cut to Chantel. Chantel, from the legislative perspective, what sort of overlap is there in terms of what the majorities want to do and what the governor is likely going to want to do? Is this an issue where there is, 99% agreement, or is there going to be some potential stumbling blocks in 2026?
No, I think there's like maybe 97, 96% agreement. Look, I think everybody wants the cost of childcare to go down. Everybody wants universal pre-K. She has this 2K that she's introducing. I think everybody wants her central themes. I think her central themes are going to be affordability, safety, and making New York a hub of innovation and technology. That's what the average legislator wants. That's a good thing to ride on. The how is where they always come into conflict.
Yeah.
How will we make New York more affordable? How much money will we invest in New York to make it more affordable? And in addition, what's the process to make New York? Like, how are we going to get the money? We know that the federal government's in chaos. We know that there's a chance that we probably won't get much from the federal government. So with our existing resources, how do we show prosperity? I think they'll be 98% in agreement, but it's always, what is it, the sausage making, like how they make the sausage.
You don't want to watch it.
I never want to. As someone who has experienced making sausage, it is quite uncomfortable. So seeing how they do it will be interesting.
Well, I want to stick with that sausage making because
thank you.
you mentioned the idea of an expansion of pre-K
Yeah.
in New York City. They're talking about reaching 2-year-olds. This is all New York City focused. The legislature, though, has members from all over the state, including in the Democratic majorities. Are they going to raise concerns about, what about me? What about the upstate 4-year-olds, maybe, who haven't even gotten access to pre-K?
Pre-K.
Is this going to be a stumbling block? Do they have to get their piece of the pie? Because it doesn't seem, at least initially, that they are super satisfied with the overall universal child care pre-K announcement. And I think that issue of access to pre-K is one that probably dates back to even your time in the state Senate.
Oh, yes. Look, I think access to pre-K is important. I think upstate's going to want access to pre-K. But where's the highest need for access to pre-K?
Sure.
And let's be honest, and I don't want to make this political, where's her biggest vote concentration? It's in New York City. So I'm not saying she's doing this for political reasons and that she just wants to get reelected, but I think she knows if you can conquer, whether it's universal pre-K, 2K, all the various different Ks, if you can conquer that in New York City, it makes expansion upstate much easier to navigate. New York City is a lot, that's like 50% of New York. So it's like if she can conquer New York City, I think it'll be easier for the rollout to expand. Will she do other things for upstate? She obviously will. She'll probably invest in, whether it's colleges, like, the SUNY system.
Yep.
She'll find ways to make sure the upstate electeds are getting some type of shine because everyone has to play this dance and everyone has to look good this year. This is going to be the best behavior we've ever had of the legislature because everyone is fighting for their life.
As your former boss would say, everyone's going to be rowing in the same direction.
They're going to be rowing. They're not going to be two ships in the night passing.
Right.
They're going to be hee-ho.
Let's stick with New York City and K's, and specifically New York City Mayor Zoran K. Mamdani. He's going to be in the room. Was that too much of a stretch? Come on. I thought that sounded good.
That was horrible.
So he's going to be in the room, and this is something that's going to hover over the session, and his presence is going to hover over elections because Republicans are going to use him as a boogeyman for Democrats. Morgan, what is your sense of his role in this speech and the session more broadly?
So I think the biggest role, honestly, is from what I've seen, Zoran Mamdani, who is an incredibly gifted politician and demonstrated that during the campaign. A lot of times, I think his critics, were looking at his behavior or his statements, previous statements when he was in the legislature and saying, this is who you're electing. What I've seen since he got elected is a guy who suddenly is an executive, right? It's very different being in the legislature versus being, the mayor or the governor. And I've seen him moderate on a lot of things. Now, I think it's far more, no offense, Dave, I think it's a lot more interesting as a reporter in the media to say, oh, look at the divisions in the Democrats and look at how is Kathy Hochul going to navigate Zoran Mamdani, who's very popular, and they're the progressive versus the moderate Democrat. I haven't seen a whole lot of daylight between Kathy Hochul and Zoran Mamdani in the first, again, he's been mayor now for like a week.
Right.
But in the lead up, after he officially became, after he officially got elected and he's sort of laying out his policy positions, there hasn't been a whole lot of daylight between these two. And I think, again, if the idea here, this legislative session and from now until November, because politics play a huge part in policy, we all know this, if a big part of this is to get us all rowing in the same direction, and we haven't said the name of the president once in this discussion so far, but you still do have this historically unpopular Republican president who is sowing divisions all over the place, all over the country. Everyone's kind of uniting, I think, against that, and that's a big part of what's going to be happening in November. So to answer your question, after that long preamble, how much of an impact does the new mayor make in terms of public policy in New York State? I don't think as much impact as what the president is going to make, and I don't think as much impact politically as what we're seeing coming out of Washington, much as Republicans would like to make the mayor into some sort of boogeyman and use him as a negative attack line in the suburbs and in upstate. They're going to do that regardless of what the policy is. But I think when it really comes down to what they're going to agree on, I think they're going to largely be in alignment.
Well, it's one thing, though, for the governor to wrap her arm around Zohran Mamdani when he is moderating himself the way he has post his primary victory in June. If he's saying, yep, we love this announcement on childcare, it's one thing for her to say, yep, I'm on board with him. But if he then needs to be more vocal on something that he promised, which was taxing the rich, and the governor has drawn a hard line in the sand on that, then why wouldn't there be a division? Why wouldn't he maybe use some of his weight to...
He's going to tax the rich.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
He's going to tax corporations.
But we don't expect her to actually lay that out in this speech or her budget address. I think you imagine.
I think she'll do it in her budget.
You do?
I think she will boldly say, I'm taxing the rich.
Then why not say it in the State of the State?
Because I don't think, historically, I just don't think it's policy. Like, granted, taxation is policy, but it's fiscal policy.
If there was a tax cut, we hear it in the speech.
But that's the shine of the budget.
Okay.
The how you're going to pay for everything is the shine of the budget. I think this is for policy. The things that, like, when I turn on the news, what do I want people to hear? And she wants people to hear, I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you, I'm making things affordable in New York. We're not Washington, D.C. We are in New York State. And I like this little thing that I'm saying, the mom in chief. I really like, I think that's a nice slogan. Thank you. I think it's a nice slogan. So, they should go with that.
Maybe she'll start introducing herself as the first mom governor.
Because I think if you look at all the stuff that she's trying to hit, she's trying to protect kids. In the State of the State, there'll be something, there was an article today about her protecting kids on Roblox. That's a common sense thing. That's a thing that everybody, like, I don't know if you guys, I have a stepdaughter and I have nieces.
Oh, I know what Roblox
They're
is.
addicted to Roblox. So
I know.
doing the age verification, closing chats, so only like, we know that predators aren't online, talking to my
strangers
niece
not
or
connecting with them.
Stranger danger. I think those are things that will move people. We in the political world may think it's hokey, but for some mom, they're going to think this is a big deal.
It's a tangible benefit for people, just like we saw with the efforts to restrict algorithms for social media for minors, or what is going to potentially be her biggest legacy, no smartphones in schools.
And I was a critic of that, but I have to tell you, I think she actually got it done, and I think it's going to help kids because Lord knows they're not paying attention in school these days.
I mean, you nailed it. You got it exactly right.
Thank
here. You said you just asked, like, so if she's going to tax the rich, why doesn't she say that today? Because, and some of this is like the gamesmanship of, there's a speech and who's the audience and how many people are actually watching the live stream or in the crowd, and then how is it going to get disseminated to the broader audience? And if she went out there and said, I'm going to tax the rich, that's the headline in every TV station in the state, that's the banner across every newspaper tomorrow. She doesn't want that, right? She wants it to be about what you're describing. She wants it to be about affordability. She wants it to be about mom in chief. I'm going to start saying it too.
I think it's a nice slogan.
You mentioned the Roblox. I'm thinking of the cell phone ban. I have 3 kids who are in New York State public schools, or at least 2 now. One of them graduated last year. But in any event, I love the cell phone ban. As a parent, as a political strategist, I might have had like the same kind of,
I was very skeptical.
But you're always in politics trying to find that thing that's going to sort of break through this sort of Planet Albany chatter and actually be something tangible that the regular New Yorker hears about and understands. And I think telling every school district in the state, you know what, we're going to take, by the way, parents, we're like powerless to take these phones away from our kids, but if the school district, if the governor's going to do it for us, oh, that's great. And then they don't have it at school, like that's a fantastic thing that makes a whole bunch of parents happy. Right. So again, I just use that as an example. You're trying to come up with public policy that can
trickle
break
down
through. Yeah, that can trickle down, break through the Planet Albany bubble, and actually get to real people, and they understand it in a way that affects their lives.
I was going to say, after her speech, she's going to release this 100, 200-page monstrosity that only the politicals are going to read. But like my mom, my sister, my husband, they're not going to read that. So for her, this is really about what are the sound bites I want to get. And she's making sure, she is focused on what she needs to do to win the election. And I think it's real wins. It's like, what's the thing that, like, when I go to vote in June, because, she has a primary, and a general, you know, I will think, what are the things that trickled down to me that I felt the impacts of Governor Hochul?
Well, in terms of tangible benefits that the state can provide, there appears to be more affordability things that the governor is focusing on, and bringing it back to those middle class tax cuts. It's one thing to say, I took action on such and such. It's another thing to do something in a way that really impacts people's pocketbooks. So like this year, one of the things that the governor is interested in is car insurance costs.
Yeah.
And as an upstate driver, I've
I'm with
noticed
it.
that despite a clean driving record, my car insurance keeps getting more and more expensive. I imagine you're putting some kids on some car insurance plans.
And those kids are having accidents.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about car
Imagine marrying
insurance.
someone from Jamaica. My car insurance is quite expensive.
Right, and so if the governor says, I'm going to tackle car insurance, is it important that we then see a meaningful discount or decline in our car insurance rates moving forward? Or if there's a 1% drop and she
Well.
goes around promoting it, does that matter? I mean, how do you guys think about the significance of some of this stuff? Can she say enough, you know, that I lowered car insurance, and we have to try to believe it, even if you don't feel it? How do you guys think about something like that?
I think it's a mix. I think on the car insurance, but I think the car insurance is like similar to like the tax cuts. It's similar to like some of these things that you don't feel instantly. That's why her agenda is a mix of things you can feel immediately and things that you can feel over time. Car insurance, there's apparently a lot of fraud in this state, and that's why our car insurances are ridiculous. And she's going to take efforts to tackle that. You probably won't feel anything until next year or the year after. But then there's some policies like, hey, you can sue an ICE agent if you want, or a federal agent. Hey, you know, you have to show judicial warrants when going into sensitive locations. Those are things that people will see immediately once the budget is passed, knock on wood, if it's in the budget. So there are things that I just think it's a mixture. And I think she's smartly doing a mixture where she's going to say, hey, I lowered your insurance, but then she's also like, I kept you safe. So it's like it's a mix.
Sure.
I think there are some costs that it might be really difficult to impact. You know, for example, health insurance, right?
Yeah.
Can a governor of any state really have an impact on health insurance costs, or is that federal policy?
Well, advocates
Maybe
of the New York Health
private.
Act would say that if we had a single-payer system in New York State,
Well,
that it would take care of the issue.
I have a bigger point here.
Exactly.
My point is not whether that question can be answered or not. My point is, I think sometimes you go after institutional problems so that you can show yourself as being an advocate on behalf of people, and you can stand with people, and she can stand there and say, hey man, car insurance is crazy and I agree with you. And then even if there isn't her actually lowering car insurance rates, it can be, she feels my pain. She understands that what we're going through, she understands that this is an issue I care about. And she's fighting for us, right? I think a lot of times in politics, it's about not just the tangible result, but it's also about feeling like someone has your back. And so I think some of these proposals might be some of that. And I don't really know anything about the public policy around and how the institutional structures and laws that create car insurance and the rates.
Put that on a business card.
Yeah,
You're all set.
that's my title. But I do think that there's real political value in being able to go out there and say, I understand what this is like, and I am going to go out there and do what I can for it. And that can convince people, and that can make people feel like she understands what they're going through.
Well, sticking with the real so-called people, let's cut to the video that's playing right now for the audience in the Hart Theater, which is supposed to demonstrate a mix of New Yorkers.
Delivered free school meals for every student.
Adults can go back to school tuition free.
Farmers and small businesses got support to keep going.
And while Washington stalled,
New York kept building housing, transit, and jobs.
In central New York, Governor Hochul secured the largest private investment in American history.
Pregnant workers get paid prenatal leave.
The minimum wage is tied to inflation.
is everything fixed?
No,
The work isn't done.
but when things get hard, we don't point fingers and we don't back down. New York steps up and leads.
On affordability,
Mental health.
On public safety,
That's what New Yorkers expect.
And that's the leadership we've had.
from a mom from Buffalo. From a mom from Buffalo.
From a mom from Buffalo.
Someone who knows what it means to stretch a dollar.
to raise a family,
And to fight
let's
for this
cut back
state
now.
every single day.
We're leading a different path.
So this is kind of the messaging that we were talking about that the governor wants to highlight, and she's clearly trying to hammer that through to the audience. And Chantel, this year, as you mentioned, the governor has not one, but two elections she's going to have to navigate. One is going to be a primary where she's going to face a challenge from her left, from her
own lieutenant governor,
who will not be present for today's speech. She's out on the road doing a listening tour, apparently not listening to the governor, right?
Of the state.
And then in November, she's going to have to fend off a challenge from Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, who is likely to be the Republican nominee. Does that mean she has to thread a needle of sorts with not just this speech, but this session, in the sense that she needs to not alienate her base, but also maybe not alienate people who might be Republican curious come November?
I think she's just going to try to do a broad net and see what she gets.
Oh,
and
actually,
speaking,
unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there because the governor has taken the stage prematurely at the Hart Theater in Albany, where she's delivering her 5th State of the State address. We're going to send you there, but stick around afterwards because we'll have insight and analysis.
First of all, recognize and acknowledge the leader of the Senate, Andrea Stewart Cousins, and Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, two extraordinary leaders I consider incredible partners as we chart the path forward for New York. Let's also give a round of applause for our protector, our Attorney General Tish James. The keeper of the coffers, our comptroller, Tom DiNapoli, did a great job. And all the way from Buffalo, one of the Buffalo Bill's biggest fans is our Assembly Majority Leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes. I'd like to recognize Senate Minority Leader Rob Ortt, Assembly Minority Leader Will Barkley, the judges of the Court of Appeals, the Mayor of New York City, Mayor Zoran Mamdani, thank you, and mayors and county executives from all across the state. Thank you for coming here today. We have representatives from Labor and many other distinguished guests. Let's hear it for Labor. Members of my incredible cabinet, led by Secretary Karen Persicilli-Keough, Catherine Garcia, the head of state operations, and the entire executive team. And I'm very proud to acknowledge New York's first ever first gentleman, my husband, Bill Hochul. Today, on this 13th day of 2026, we'll embark on a journey together. A State of a State address is a chance to look into the future. But this address actually calls us to do something much bigger than this moment. The origins of our nation, founded 250 years ago, and how that history shapes where we are and where we must go from here. That's the tone I want to talk about, that incredible history that defines us as a country and New Yorkers. Because from the very beginning, New Yorkers have always been a rather rebellious lot, willing to take on forces larger than ourselves in the cause of liberty and freedom. It's that resilience, that strength, that spirit, that willingness to fight for a better future that was born in secret meetings in the taverns of Albany and New York City, charting a path forward under the weight of an oppressive power. Sound familiar? It's not in here. And later, with New York as our country's first capital, our bold revolutionary leaders became the governing leaders of a new nation filled with unlimited possibilities. Over my 4 years as your governor, listening to your stories, feeling the pulse of this great state, I have seen the same strength, the resilience, the optimism that defined New Yorkers 250 years ago. And I shaped our agenda for 2026 and beyond. As I did that, I kept returning to conversations from everyday New Yorkers, from every corner of the state, people who refuse to back down on their dreams. People like Teresa Durham, a Syracuse grandmother I was lucky enough to meet last May. Thanks to our housing policies, Teresa just fulfilled her lifelong dream of owning a home. People like Deborah Koenigsberg, who owns a clothing boutique in the Flatiron District. Spent a lot of money there, Deborah. Her business, though, is getting hit so hard from Trump's tariffs. And somehow she's making it all work while still leading a nonprofit that supports homeless children and women. And I think about young people like Josiah Morales, a 14-year-old who had the courage to seek help when he was struggling with mental health. Today, he's out sharing his inspiring story, reminding his peers it's okay to accept a helping hand. So, thank you. So when I say your family is my fight, these are the people I'm talking about. I carry their stories and those of countless others with me because I've lived my own version of them. Growing up in a cramped home outside of Buffalo, sharing a drafty attic with a couple of brothers, doing my homework late at night by a space heater after I'd get home at 11 o'clock from working the shift at the local pizzeria. I actually make very good pizza, you should try it. But not knowing where my paths would lead, but I learned this. When people work hard, when someone has their back, it can change the entire course of their life. And that is why I believe with my whole heart that government can and must be a force for good. And over the last 4 years, we've proven it. We took our state emerging from a crisis and powered a comeback that few thought was possible. Crime is down. Crime is down in the places New Yorkers feel it the most, on our streets and our subways. Our communities are safer than they've been in years. And we know people need a safe place to live. That's why, working together with the legislature, we secured the most significant housing deal in half a century, so young families can put down roots. And we expanded childcare, capped the cost of insulin, and launched the nation's very first paid parental leave program. That's how you change lives. We also made historic investments in clean energy, chips manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, and creating tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. And the impact is undeniable. Retail is surging. More college graduates are moving to New York than anywhere else in the entire country. We're leading the nation in return to office. From Babylon to Buffalo, New York is rising. So if you're betting on the future, you need to bet on New York. If you're searching for talent, you will find it in New York. If you're looking for the epicenter of culture and innovation and opportunity, it has always been, will always remain, New York. My friends, I am so proud to stand before you and say the state of New York is strong. And we're just getting started. But I need to level with you. This moment carries real threats from Donald Trump and his enablers in Congress, driving up costs on everything from groceries to farm equipment through these reckless tariffs, killing major infrastructure projects that put union members to work, tearing apart nursing immigrant mothers from their babies and calling it public safety. And just last week, the World Watch has an immigration operation in Minneapolis that never should have been there, left a child without a mother, and a community, and indeed a nation, shattered. It's all part of an agenda that only makes our lives harder. But here's the thing about New Yorkers, we don't back down. We rise up. And when they tried to take away funding for our first responders and law enforcement, we made them restore it. When they tried to kill congestion pricing, we beat them back in court again and again. But literally less than 24 hours ago, the president made another threatening social media post. Mr. President, the message is still the same. We will not bow to a wannabe king, and the congestion pricing is staying on. Yes, this is a real year of uncertainty driven by reckless federal policies. Washington's chaos is hitting our bottom line, but here's the good news. We built the boat to withstand the storm. We've managed our money responsibly, and that means we can make transformative investments in our future without raising taxes, without settling the next generation with mounds of debt. We can get this done. 4 years ago, we laid out a bold vision, and I took responsibility to deliver and make it real. As we head into 2026, we are seeing the results. Clean hydropower for the first time flowing from Quebec to over 1 million homes in New York City. Long-stalled housing projects finally rising from the ground. A new stadium bringing pride and investment to Western New York. Go Bills! Now, you're all allowed to say go Bills. Thank you. Okay. See, I'm trying to unite downstate and upstate. This is the best thing I've got, right? We also have the brand new Belmont Park carrying racing into the future. The World Cup, drawing soccer fans around the globe. They're coming here. And critical infrastructure is finally being rebuilt, from the Port Authority bus terminal to our bridges and tunnels, to expanding the 2nd Avenue subway even further. And the Interborough Express will connect Queens and Brooklyn like never before. It's all moving forward in 2026. Even the renovations at Penn Station that I got the president to finally focus on and pay for, long dreamed about, are on a path forward. Also, families will get a little more breathing room with another minimum wage hike, better paid family leave, a child tax credit up to $1,000 per child under the age of 4. And let me say this, we have the lowest middle-class tax rates in 70 years. Let me repeat that, the lowest in 70 years. And we lifted a major burden that was on businesses by paying off billions of dollars in unemployment insurance debt, while increasing the benefits by 70%. Now, this is a critical safety net for anyone who finds themselves out of work. Well, what else can we look forward to in 2026? World-renowned companies are reinvigorating communities that were overlooked for too long. Look what's coming. Micron in Onondaga County, shovels in the ground. Now, not 3 years from now, 3 days from now, shovels are going in the ground. Micron is happening. Fairlife in Monroe County, Chobani in Oneida County. These wins are the results of fights we took on, investments we made, and a future we chose together. And when I say together, that means my great partners in state government, It also means the local leaders who work around the clock, keeping our towns and our cities running. Let's hear from a few of them.
We are New York.
We are New York.
We are New York.
We are New York.
Across the state, local leaders are building opportunity.
Street by street.
Neighborhood by neighborhood.
Turning visions into results that
people can see and feel.
But none of us can do this alone.
And progress doesn't happen without
leadership from the top.
Leaders like Governor Kathy Hochul.
Governor Kathy Hochul.
Since she took office in 2021,
Governor Hochul has delivered really unprecedented investments in our crime analysis centers.
Investing in law enforcement.
She's helped small cities like Peekskill flourish.
A $230 million hospital.
$3.2 million to support 50 units of affordable housing.
$10 million more for economic development projects creating jobs in Western New York.
The single largest economic development investment in our county's history.
$400 million in state investments to revitalize our downtown.
She's been focused on making New York more affordable and is a trusted partner in our shared fight for universal child care.
We're committed to working with Governor Hochul to make affordable, high-quality child care.
Take it from someone who's leading the city of Poughkeepsie,
who works in the village of Hempstead,
North Tonawanda,
Newburgh,
Buffalo, the city of Yonkers.
Every single day.
When New Yorkers work together,
we can accomplish anything.
Governor Hochul gets that.
She's delivered for us
so that we can deliver for you.
She has our back
because she knows
we are New York.
We are New York.
We are New York.
We are New York.
Yes. Yes, we are New York. And as your governor, I'm so proud to lead the fight to protect our communities, build an economy that works for all. And today, I'm here to tell you how we're going to continue that fight. And it starts and ends with making life more affordable. Whether we're talking about childcare, groceries, utility bills, one thing is clear. Parents, veterans, disabled, seniors, they all need relief. And that's why last year, working with this legislature, we put upwards of $5,000 back in the pockets of hard-working New Yorkers. Well, that's the good news. But now, Washington Republicans are waging an all-out war on the middle class, driving up costs, leaving states to pick up the pieces. So this year, while Washington takes a machete to our safety net, I'm doubling down on the fight for a more affordable New York, starting with child care. For parents, working parents, no cost is more overwhelming. And I know how urgent this is because I lived it. When Bill and I were just starting out, child care was one of our greatest obstacles. I was fresh out of law school, all excited about my career, dream job working on Capitol Hill for Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a true legend. When our babies arrived, and I'm happy they came, but I had to give up that career. No, they're great kids. They're now giving me other babies, which is great. But we simply couldn't find available, affordable child care like so many other people then and now. It was heartbreaking. It was tough then, but for too many families today, it is almost impossible. Get this. In New York City, child care costs between $26,000 and $40,000 a year. For that price, your toddler should be fluent in 3 languages and doing your taxes. One year ago, I stood on this very stage and placed our state on the path to universal child care. Today, I stand before you with a clear roadmap to show you how we'll get there, building on over $8 billion in child care investments we have made since 2022. And this plan will ultimately deliver universal child care for every single family in New York, full stop. Full stop. Now, the work has already begun. 5 days ago, I stood with Mayor Mondami. We stood together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Come on. Republicans have kids too. You can stand. Like I said, 5 days ago, I stood with Mayor Mamdani to announce that the state will fully fund the first 2 years of his Universal Care program while also helping New York City realize the full promise of Universal 3K. We made that commitment and we'll keep it and beyond. Statewide, we're taking a different but equally ambitious approach. We're promising universal pre-K for every single 4-year-old by 2028. And this year, we'll pilot community-wide child care to provide year-round, full-day, affordable care for newborns to 3-year-olds. And we'll build on that proven success of our state child care assistance program and our voucher program so tens of thousands more families can access high-quality care for no more than $15 a week. And thanks to our strong economy, we have the revenues to get these initiatives off the ground. But to keep the momentum going, we also need partnership with the private sector. So we'll work with employers, improve tax incentives for those who invest in child care benefits. I want New York to be the #1 place for anyone to start a family and build their future right here. When we do that, we all win. Our classrooms are fuller, our economy is stronger, and our communities are richer in every sense of the word. But affordability doesn't stop at child care. Right now, the average New York household pays nearly $1,700 per year just to keep the lights on and the heat running. Now, we've got some challenges. Donald Trump's stop work order on offshore wind only makes it worse in the long run. And I'm fighting that every step of the way. But while that battle continues, we're taking action now. Streamlining utility assistance, helping homeowners make energy-efficient upgrades, and protecting New Yorkers who are being blindsided by exorbitant rate hikes. We can make energy more affordable and reliable while still leading the nation in sustainable investments, leaving this state even stronger for our children and grandchildren. And there's another affordability issue that's been apparent for years. Anybody out there own a car? The sky-high cost of auto insurance. Now, in many parts of our state, owning an automobile is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Yet, New Yorkers pay the highest auto insurance rates in the nation, averaging $4,000 a year, $1,500 more than the national average. Now, not because New Yorkers are doing anything wrong. I'm sure they're all really good drivers, right? I think they are. But why? Because of rampant fraud and runaway litigation costs are jacking up the prices. Now, let me be clear how that happens. When the system allows out-of-control payouts, those costs get passed on to you in the form of higher monthly premium bills. New Yorkers should not pay more for the same coverage. And this is the year we're going to do something about it. We're putting the brakes on fraud. We're ending a system that rewards illegal behavior. And if you are driving drunk, driving without a license, or committing a felony at the time of the crash, you should not get a payday. This is about finally standing up for millions of New York drivers who deserve a break. And this year, we'll continue cracking down on criminals of all kinds. When I came into office, New York was facing a crisis of crime and disorder. In the 2 years before I arrived, shootings had nearly doubled. Repeat offenders were cycling in and out of the criminal justice system, and too many people felt unsafe. I promised New Yorkers I would do everything in my power to restore safety and security. And we backed that promise with action. We made unprecedented investments in police and public safety, over $3 billion. We enacted the strongest gun laws in the nation, along with common sense reforms to keep serial offenders off the streets and to stop criminals from walking free on technicalities. We also equipped the police with the best technology, deployed more officers in the subway, and we formed specialized units to crack down on retail theft and also on domestic violence. 4 years later, crime is hitting record lows. Shootings, homicides, subway crime, all down. But I'll tell you this, we'll never be satisfied. So this year we're building on what works, using data, coordination, smart enforcement to stay ahead of the criminals, and we'll expand our successful network of crime analysis centers statewide. On our subways, we're committed to maintaining enhanced police patrols. We'll install more platform barriers at 85 additional locations and expand our elite mental health units to get people in crisis off the trains and into care. We've stemmed the tide of firearms that were flowing into our state along the iron pipeline. But now we're taking aim at the plastic pipeline. This is incredible. Illegal 3D printed ghost guns are now homemade killing machines, assembled with pieces you can easily purchase. And how is that possible? To fight back, I'm proposing the first in the nation law requiring all 3D printers sold in the state of New York to include software that blocks the printer from creating a gun. It's just common sense. Just common sense. And we're putting gun manufacturers on notice. You will no longer sell handguns that can be converted into semi-automatic machines able to fire 1,200 rounds a minute. Not here, not in New York. And that's how we save lives and fight crime. As we reflect on the freedoms fought so hard for 250 years ago, among them is the freedom to practice your religion without interference. In 2026, we'll take steps to protect our houses of worship against the rising tide of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Now, New York has already invested $130 million to better secure these sacred spaces. But clearly much more has to be done. Just last week, protesters led pro-Hamas chants outside a synagogue in Kew Gardens Hills. That's not free expression, that's harassment. And targeting a Jewish community this way is anti-Semitism. And that's why I'm proposing a ban on these protests, and I'll respect people's right to protest any day of the week, but not within 25 feet of the property line at houses of worship. So those who simply want to pray, can do so without fear or harassment. Everybody deserves that. Every faith deserves that. My responsibility for keeping New Yorkers safe, as you know, extends to our kids as well. We've taken on big tech and passed nation-leading laws so kids will no longer be subjected to the addictive algorithms that manipulate their minds. They'll no longer be targets for mega corporations monetizing their mental health. And now, when the school day begins, their cell phones are tucked away under our bell-to-bell ban. And in just the last 4 months, the transformation has been extraordinary. Extraordinary. Classrooms are alive with discussion. Laughter fills our lunchrooms. And Frankie Focus haunts our children's dreams. He is a weird-looking dude. But I say, building on our success, I say we enact new requirements to protect all social media users under the age of 18. Let's block direct messages from would-be child predators, number one. Let's disable AI chatbots that can cause serious mental health problems. Let's block location sharing. Why should they know where our kids are? And let's do more to cut off access to online sports gaming so our kids are not ensnared by addiction at a young age. We can get that done. I know we can. Now, you've heard me say our communities cannot reach their full potential without an abundant supply of safe, affordable housing. We've talked about this a lot. For too long, overburdensome regulations have made it too hard, not just to build homes, but the places people work and the infrastructure our future depends upon. And that's why 4 years ago, I made a commitment to challenge the status quo, to cut the red tape, and to clear the way to build, build, and build some more. We took on a system that was failing our families and passed the most significant housing deal in 50 years. We got that done. But we made it very clear, standing still is no longer an option. As a result, when we did this, we saved over 71,000 homes that were at risk of being scrapped. We opened the door for another 800,000 over the next decade. And we funded shovel-ready projects. We strengthened tenant protections. We turned vacant properties into homes and protected rent-regulated housing. And local governments are stepping up, too. Under our plan, over 400 pro-housing communities have agreed to build more homes. Not because we lead with carrots, because we lead with carrots. I started with a stick. Went right away to carrots. Eat your carrots. But under my approach, we have communities saying yes to building housing for the first time ever. They're stepping up. And I thank those communities. At first, we started with just 20 communities that were willing to step forward and say, I'll build more housing to get my hands on $650 million. I think everybody realized, we'd like to share that money too. So we're going to keep changing the culture around building. We have 400 communities. We're going to keep building this. And this year, we're going to invest an additional $250 million into affordable housing and $100 million to scale innovative manufactured housing that lowers costs and speeds constructions. These homes are beautiful, my friends. This is not the trailer park my parents started life in, that tiny rundown building. This is incredible. You can't tell the difference. I've visited so many of them. We'll also update our tax incentives to help owners of rent-regulated buildings in New York City make the repairs and investments to get more housing stock online. And we'll crack down on the worst landlords with increased penalties and strengthen rent relief for seniors and New Yorkers with disabilities. But as far as we've still come, there's a lot of projects still stuck. Not because they're bad ideas, but because of the system itself. The system has become the obstacle. Even projects everybody agrees we need, affordable housing, clean energy, critical infrastructure, can spend years trapped in red tape, pushing up the costs and pushing opportunity further and further out of reach. So this year, we're taking a hard look at the environmental review processes that have not been updated in half a century. Now, right now, they slow down the very projects that help us fight climate change, create housing, and strengthen our communities. That's why in this budget, I'm proposing a simple, common sense update. When communities say yes to housing, infrastructure, clean energy, we're going to let them build. And when a town or city decides to move forward, they should not get stuck in regulatory hell. Now, cutting red tape doesn't end at the construction site. It extends to government, too. This year, we'll eliminate onerous, outdated regulations and leverage cutting-edge technology to show us how to make government work better. But we'll also do it the old-fashioned way, talking to small business owners and other impacted businesses about the bureaucratic barriers that are holding them back. People deserve to know their tax dollars are being spent wisely and that their government is operating efficiently. While we're bringing
This is live coverage of the New York State of the State Address from New York Now and the New York State Public News Network.
Our state is home to 8.5 million private sector jobs, almost 1 million more than when I first took office. And now we're forging ahead, tapping into the creativity that has always defined our state. Just looking back 200 years ago, the Erie Canal made New York State an industrial powerhouse. It's sustained generations of jobs, good-paying manufacturing jobs in entire communities. But those jobs, when they were shipped overseas in the 1970s, communities like mine paid the price. I remember when the steel plant shut down in Buffalo. It took a toll. And I remember seeing the pain from the out-of-business signs, businesses gone dark, the drawn faces I saw on the sidewalk that have lost hope. None of my siblings, big Irish Catholic family, right? Lots of siblings. They couldn't even stay in the town they wanted to grow up and raise their kids in. The lesson that taught me will never be forgotten. New York should never be left at the mercy of decisions made far away with no regard for the people here at home. So we're ushering in a rebirth of manufacturing, one that's built to last. In 2022, we enacted the nation's largest semiconductor incentive program, ensuring that the defining technology of our time would be built in New York by New Yorkers. We're already landing the world's largest chip makers, but to ensure that these opportunities are within reach for all, not just reserved for a select few, I'm going to be investing $500 million to help all New Yorkers gain the skills they need to succeed. We'll do that. Let's go way back, though. It starts with the fundamentals you learn in school. And that's why 2 years ago, I took on some strong interest and insisted that we go back to basics on how we teach our kids to read for the first time in 20 years. And we got rid of ineffective methods. We took on that fight and we won. This year, let's take the same approach to math so we can prepare the next generation for the jobs of tomorrow. And for those who want to embark on a new career, adults who want to do something different or the job that they chose isn't working out, we launched free community college for adult learners pursuing high-demand careers from healthcare to advanced manufacturing. And just since last summer, more than 11,000 more people enrolled than would have done it otherwise. We're opening the doors of opportunity like my family had. Let's expand it even further. It's working. Let's expand it to add new fields like logistics, air traffic control, emergency management, other fields. We can get this done. But also, speaking of preparing for the future, we must plan for the energy that industries require. Now, last year, I took on the bold step of greenlighting the first nuclear project in a generation. It is a vital part of our all-the-above approach to energy. I realized it sounded very ambitious. At the time, we set a goal of building 1 gigawatt of nuclear power. And we thought about it. There's one thing I believe: you go big or you go home. So I've decided to raise the bar to 5 gigawatts. That's more nuclear power than is built anywhere in the United States in the last 30 years. Let's do it. So many communities are begging for this upstate. And also, to make sure New Yorkers are ready for these good-paying opportunities, there's going to be a lot of building involved, my friends in labor, we're going to have a nuclear workforce development program so we can forge our clean energy future together. We'll see what Homer's doing. But let me be clear. Our energy system exists to serve New Yorkers first. Now, data centers are vital for an innovative future, but they guzzle up tremendous amounts of energy and leave ratepayers footing the bill. So if they want to build in New York, they have to pay their fair share for the power they use But also, ultimately, I want them, if you're going to come, you have to generate your own power independently, clean energy, not on the grid, and we're going to make sure that, because we will not allow technology to undermine our infrastructure and raise costs for New Yorkers. And we also won't allow technology to undermine our democracy, because people deserve to trust what they see and hear during election season. So this year, we'll require disclosures on all AI-generated images and videos so real New Yorkers know what's real and what's not. And we'll strengthen our existing laws that will prohibit deepfakes that impersonate candidates, deceive voters, and manipulate elections. Take a good look at these guns. Take a look at the guns. It's the last time you're going to see them. But all jokes aside, New York has always been a place where fundamental rights are vigorously defended. At a moment when those rights are under direct attack, New York is doing what we've always done. We're standing firm. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, we acted immediately, protecting abortion access and shielding patients and providers from political persecution. We enshrined the Equal Rights Amendment in our state constitution, and we strengthened one of the nation's oldest human rights laws. But over the last year, that record has come under siege by the Trump administration. One of the clearest examples of what's at stake is the right to health care. Republicans in Washington want to drive up premiums, deny coverage, and force families to choose between seeing a doctor and paying their rent. Here in New York, we're going to fight like hell to stop them. This year, we'll protect affordable health care for more than 1.3 million New Yorkers at risk of losing it. That's how we stand up. We're also protecting access to life-saving vaccines. Last year, when pharmacies started turning people away, I literally had to declare an emergency, and we had to expand who could prescribe and administer vaccines so no New Yorker is left unprotected. And think about our kids. This year, I'll go further, ensuring New York's immunization standards are set by trusted medical experts, not conspiracy theorists. Crazy idea, right? Also, protecting New Yorkers also means this: standing up to ICE agents who abuse their power. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. New York is a state that was built by immigrants, people like my own grandparents who fled great poverty in Ireland. And we don't forget where we came from. Over the last year, communities across New York, from farms in Sackett's Harbor to factories in Cuyahoga County to high schools on Long Island, have been shaken by aggressive federal immigration actions that go too far. Yesterday, they arrested an analyst at New York City Hall, an analyst with legal work authorization. Have you met an analyst lately? I mean, they're really not threatening. They're not the baddest of the bad. I mean, they're just doing their jobs. Is that person really a threat? Come on. I'll do whatever it takes to protect New Yorkers from criminals any day of the week. I always have, always will. But people of all political beliefs are saying the same thing. What we've seen lately has gone too far, and enough is enough. So, New York will not allow the use of state resources to assist in federal immigration raids on people who have not committed serious crimes. Not doing it. Let me be clear. Public safety will always come first, but it must be pursued lawfully and with humanity. We will not allow masked ICE agents to storm our schools, our daycare centers, our hospitals, our houses of worship for civil immigration raids unless they have a judicial warrant. And guess what that means? Signed by a judge. And when these boundaries are crossed, accountability matters. No one, from the president on down, is above the law. Let me repeat, no one. And that's why I will allow to move to have New Yorkers hold ICE agents and others accountable in court when they act outside their scope of duties. Now we need accountability. This does not interfere with local law enforcement or public safety. It simply affirms a core truth. Power does not justify abuse. And if someone's constitutional rights are violated here in the state of New York, I say they deserve their day in court. No matter what happens in Washington, no matter who's in the White House, rest assured, your family, your future are my fight. And, you know, history has proven when freedom is on the line, New York shows up, beginning with the ordinary people who stood up and fought for their freedoms and values when they were under attack 250 years ago. We are the patriots. We are not. No. Wrong. Patriots. Get rid of that. Not those patriots who fought. You guys screwing around. The patriots who forged the new nation. We are the people who shed blood at Saratoga, blazed a trail from Seneca Falls, demanded dignity at Stonewall. And when the American experiment was put to the test, when the path was darkest, it is New Yorkers who light the way forward. Some of the challenges before us today are very similar to those New Yorkers faced 250 years ago. Others are new. The battles may look different, but there's one thing that never changes. It's that unspeakable spirit and the toughness of the people of this state. You see it every single day. You see it in the police officer patrolling the streets of the night, allowing the rest of us to sleep safely. You see it in teachers encouraging students to pursue their dreams, like my 8th grade social studies teacher, Mr. Peter James, did at Hamburg Middle School. It's the nurse in the North Country who puts her kids to bed before heading to the hospital for the overnight shift. It's the 5th-generation dairy farmer in Wyoming County, up before dawn, knowing that people are counting on him for their very existence. Different callings, but a shared experience, one purpose. Showing up and standing guard, doing the work day after day. That's the legacy we must uphold. And I believe that 250 years from now, people will look back at this moment in time and ask, did we stand up and fight for the most fundamental rights when they were under attack? Did we stand up and protect New York as a beacon of opportunity for people all over the world? A place where you can raise a family without being crushed by bills, where you can afford a home, where you can start a business or work a farm without being destroyed by tariffs. Did we properly invest in education, knowing that an educated populace may be our best defense against tyranny? And And when long-cherished rights were stripped away and our very democracy was threatened, did we stand up and fight back and protect them? Now, to each of these questions, I know New Yorkers will accept no answer other than a resounding yes. And that, my friends, is the essence of my 2026 State of the State. In the weeks ahead, working with Leader Stuart Cousins and Speaker Heastie, we'll find even more ways to deliver for New Yorkers, just as we've done these last 5 years. Because there's one thing I know. So New Yorkers move forward with strength and compassion side by side. There's no challenge we can't meet, no tyrant we can't beat, no future we can't build. So let's build that future together with enthusiasm, optimism, and with fearlessness. It must be tough. We have to be strong. And just to conclude, I say this. What else can you possibly say on a day like today other than, let's go Bills!
And that was Governor Kathy Hochul's State of the State address from New York Now and the New York State Public News Network. And now we're going to briefly consider what we just heard and some of what maybe we didn't hear. And to do all that, we're joined in the studio again by Chantel Plummer, head of the New York practice for Tusk Strategies, where she's also a partner, and Morgan Hook, a partner with Blue Jacket Strategies. So Morgan, in a previous life, you were a journalist, much like myself, if not a better looking version. And for me, I'm trying to make sense of what is the headline from this speech tomorrow. And essentially, it's sort of Kathy Hochul 25 2.0. I mean, it's kind of that same sort of affordability, anti-Trump, but building maybe on what we saw in the past. That's a lot of gobbledygook, kind of hard to condense. So what, if anything, do you think permeates from this speech? What is the headline from the speech?
So, yes, in a former life, I worked in television. I was a producer and reporter. And so I'm sitting here listening for that one sort of soundbite. What's the thing that you lead the newscast with? Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I heard it. Like, I'm sure we could go back and go find a 15-second clip. But there was no sort of like, wow, that was the crescendo of the speech. But I think you nailed it. I think that the takeaway from the speech, and you can go back and find the soundbite, but the takeaway from the speech is the affordability agenda, and it's what are the individual public policy proposals that we're going to have that are going to be about helping New Yorkers. It's going to be some of the things that they've rolled out in the days leading up to the speech. Sure. It's car insurance. It's childcare expenses. I heard some interesting things, and we can talk about it a little later, about like energy and data centers and things like that, which I do think may not immediately feel like something that is going to be an affordability agenda thing, but very much is. She did have some good sound bites in there. Do they perfectly match with the affordability agenda? Not necessarily, but I think that's the takeaway, that what we're seeing today. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if she's repeating the themes from last year. No. That is the theme that she wants to be associated with.
You have to hammer that stuff home.
You've got to say that over and over and over again.
Yeah, and this speech, though, has a variety of different audiences for it. So you mentioned something like data centers, and there's obviously some people who care a lot about, say, where data centers are going to get their power from. And so there's a constituency on the left that she's appealing to there, and there are other constituencies that she's trying to appeal to. And what are you thinking?
No, I think she's trying to appeal to everyday New Yorkers. When these data centers come into the state and use and generate all this energy, later on it's going to trickle down to your utility bill, which is already high.
In terms of ranking things, there are some people who this is it. There's people in like Seneca Falls who really care about this issue. It's number one. There's other people, though, where that's like much further down the list. So while someone might care, it might not necessarily rank. But Chantel, I want to come back to something that we brought up before the speech, which was this idea that the governor and the legislature are, broadly speaking, that is the Democratic majorities, broadly speaking, rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, she actually referenced it.
Yeah, did that speech seem to indicate here's plenty of stuff that you and I can do together, or does some of that set up to be a fight potentially, or at least a challenge to assemble a majority for?
No, I think all the things that she said, like who doesn't want to expand mental health? Who doesn't want to streamline utility assistance? Like the things that she's saying are things that they all want to do. I think the legislature may want to go a little bit further, and that's what happens after the budget. That's when the legislative session really gets hot, and that's when state legislators do what they want to do. But if this is her agenda, this is her agenda, and it's the things that, what do they always say? It's the thing that 64 or 65% of the population can agree on. It's just your everyday things. I'm a big fan of the governor. I think she went with not shock and awe. She went with stability. Sometimes when you're in politics, you want the thing, like the big marker or the big policy thing. And I think she's just like, I'm the everyday stability. I'm the everyday stable politician. I'm holding it down. I'm keeping New Yorkers safe and affordable. This is my platform. And you don't have to be like, wow, this is so exciting. It just has to be doable.
I think that's especially true right now when you compare it with what's going on in D.C. and it just feels like it's chaos every day coming out of D.C. and what's happening in Minneapolis, which is being driven by federal policy and federal actions from the Trump administration, and just being a rock and being a functional, not corrupt, not dysfunctional government in New York.
We adopt a state budget. They don't do that.
We do that, and we do it on time. That can be a pretty compelling. That's kind of what you want from your government, right? Just to not be embroiled in scandal all the time and doing things to intentionally harm people. Maybe, to your point, maybe that is a real distinction between what you're seeing coming out of D.C. for most voters in New York. The perception, I would think, for most voters in New York. That's a real distinction between what you're seeing coming out of D.C. versus coming out of Albany.
And one thing I want to add is that she, I know we talked about collegiality. Her tone was extremely collegial, not to just the state legislature, but also to your local electeds. It's like a big, and if you saw the video that she played during her speech, it was highlighting local officials in both like the county and city mayors. It was Republican, Democrat. So I think she's trying to pitch a big tent, appeal to the masses, and show that she is stability. We saw Sue Serino.
Yep, Dutchess County executive, a Republican.
Which, in a year where we're going to have a Republican coming after her for the general, it was actually quite endearing to me.
But in terms of that relationship between the legislature and the governor, and the legislature potentially wanting to go further on something like immigration, obviously what she talked about here got a round of applause from a friendly room, but I wonder whether the legislature is going to want to go further on some issues, especially when it comes to ICE and she's comfortable with. And then there's also the issue of something like car insurance, which there are reasons why some of these things don't get tackled in Albany, because there are stakeholders that like the status quo for certain reasons, like the trial lawyers, which put out a statement.
Big bad trial lawyers.
One person's big bad trial lawyer is another person's reasonable person in this stakeholder system. But so there are people that they're going to have to woo or steamroll, so to speak.
We've seen I will say this. I think the legislature and the governor, they have steamrolled certain advocates and certain constituents when necessary. It just depends. I think for some of the car insurance things, we talked about this, I don't know if that trickled down to immediate savings or immediate impact, so I don't know if that's going to be worth the bite for some of the electeds. I think the immigration stuff, due to the times that we're feeling, I think the majority leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, has already said, she already put the stake down. She's going to do immigration. We need to hear from, Speaker Hastie, but I do think things like that, they will go against the traditional model of legislating in Albany to get something done, just based on the times that we have.
We have about 2 minutes left, and Morgan, I'm already getting flooded in my inbox.
Getting flooded?
With what was that?
You're getting flooded with what?
Getting comments from Republicans who say the speech was out of touch. It doesn't actually reflect what people care about. It's not being responsive enough to the problems that real people have. Do you think that is a message that's going to resonate?
Well, look, I'm a Democratic strategist, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But I've been in this state and working in Democratic politics now for coming up on 20 years. And what I have heard from Republicans the entire time is how awful a place it is, right? That's just the repeating theme constantly. Oh, what a disaster everything is. Like, when you're not in power, I guess that's the message that you want to send constantly. So I take all of that with a huge grain of salt when that's their leading message. Like, she's doing a terrible job. What else are they going to say? I will point out, though, I think there is one place that raised my eyebrows anyway in the speech. And that was when she was talking about sort of streamlining, when communities say yes, we're going to let them build. What does that mean? What are the details of that? But the way I hear that is on energy. And one place where we've seen a dramatic shift from Democrats, especially in New York, and from Kathy Hochul, is on the issue of what kind of power are we going to build? Are we going to get rid of natural gas completely? You know, she talked a lot about nuclear there and dramatically expanding what she wants to do on that. But something in the state energy plan from earlier this year was, or from late last year was, we're going to keep natural gas as part of the energy fleet. And if I'm hearing when communities say yes, we're going to let them build, does that mean they're going to let them build gas plants? We've talked a lot about energy and energy costs. Does that mean we're going to take old gas plants and make them new and cleaner? And that could potentially be a fight with some of your environmental supporters in the Democratic Party. Let's see what that looks like.
Well,
by the way,
unfortunately,
they should do it.
That's all the time we have for this conversation, so we'll have to get into that in a future episode, because if you turn into New York Now on Friday, you'll get additional analysis and reporting on the activities at the Capitol. And I want to thank my guests today, Chantel Plummer of Tusk Strategies and Morgan Hook of Blue Jacket Strategies, for spending their afternoon with us. I'm David Lombardo. Thanks for joining us.